This is David Everest. I'm got a tort against the U.S. Forest Service and a magistrate clerk and a judge panel and other defendants in the government-to-government coordination of my property rights. This is property rights of the mining claim, township, and unincorporated city. And they did put me in jail, magistrate clerk did, but because I filed suit against him, magistrate clerk, he became a co-defendant. I found out today, this is Saturday, through the mail, that magistrate clerk is recommending dismissal, and he's giving me until the 28th to file an objection to his recommendation, 28th of February, and he's giving me sometime in March to amend my complaint. My complaint, I don't believe it needs to be defended. That's why he acted on it in one day. But see, since he's a defendant, I got a question. Can defendants make motions or reports, recommendations, and rulings for dismissal, or can we just file motions to dismiss and have an impartial magistrate or judge hear the case? Since he's a defendant, how can a defendant rule on anything or make any recommendations whatsoever to Judge Penner so Judge Penner can rubber stamp this tort? I have my right for a day in court, and I have my right to an impartial forum, which means an Article 3 judge, and I insist I get an Article 3 judge that's impartial and not prejudiced due to the fact they like government, and they like big government, and they like public-private partnerships, and they like rolling over property owners for the benefit of the public-private partnership, which we called that during World War II incompatible with a republic form of government and a constitutional form of government. Public-private partnerships done through non-profits or for profits cannot happen because corporations can't be governments, and governments are like oil and water to corporations. You can't merge the two. They're trying to do that, and we call that National Socialism or Nazism or fascism. Now, that we have what we call the Smith Act, when we try to change our government and attack the Constitution by changing our government from a republic form of government where the minorities have rights. And I don't mean the minority of race, I mean the minority of status, meaning that you're poor or you're not, you're rich or you're not, but because we don't have mob rule, we have representation by office holders, whether they be judicial or whether they be administrative or whether they be congressional. And since we have this form of government, we get to speak to our representatives in Congress, state legislatures, and even the president administratively. And they've given us laws to deal administratively over property rights with these agencies called the Federal Land Policy Management Act. It's called FLPMA. It's under 1701 ET sequential. You read the whole thing. And then there's other places it sends you to that you read those. So government-to-government coordination is a mining district, a township, and an unincorporated city, and a mining claim are local governments with home rule. And that's in from the hearings I held at Josephine County and Jackson County, and they've proved me for government-to-government coordination. Well, I can't get the Forest Service, the BLM, the FBI, the Homeland Security to coordinate with me over my government-to-government issues because, see, the kind of mining claim I have is paramount to national defense because I have a very good claim, very valuable, lots of different minerals, and probably including rare earth minerals and rare earth magnets. And rare earth, other minerals, and it's a valuable mineral deposit. Very valuable. It sits on a alluvial deposit of placer on a hard rock that is within three geological periods of time: the Jurassic, and the Tertiary periods. These periods were known because of their volcanic activity to be very rich, especially the Tertiary. Anyways, so I have these three fault lines I get to mine out. They're preventing me from perfecting my mining claim so I can gain the supreme title with no encumbrances, with local control, with my local government, which is me. And I would like to get this out. We have a federal magistrate that makes rulings. We have a federal judge that rubber stamps them. Their names are Magistrate Clark, Mark D. Clark, and Owen Panner. He's an Article 3 judge. But because the magistrate in a tort does a lot of the preliminary things, and if they don't object to consent to the magistrate hearing, then you could go straight to the Ninth Circuit. I have a right to be tried by an Article 3 judge. I insist on it. And I insist on Judge Owen Panner's and Magistrate Clark recuse themselves from even hearing this case because they're co-defendants. It's for another judge to rule on their actions of a constructive trust of fraud for attacking the patent of the valuable mineral grant. Now, an unpatented claim and a patented claim are equal. They have different subject matter to deal with. An unpatented claim is I have to do maintenance and certain work or pay certain fees to hold it for a year. While I'm holding it under the assessment work I perform, and the fees I pile is a constructive purchase and payment. I get to hold it for a year. I own it under possessory title. Now, I have a right to perfect it for the greater title. By the way, that's the only one that stands supreme, and when I demanded that the Forest Service cough up their title, because they didn't own the mineral claim, they couldn't cough up a title, so they have none. They have none that's superior to mine. And the valuable mineral deposit, grant, and trust is the dominant estate. And I have a right under the terms of the trust, as long as I perform it, and I can make a reasonable living from my minerals. Doesn't have to be millions. It's what they call the reasonable man standard. Doesn't even mean minimum wage. If it's what a reasonable man dig that up to get that mineral, and if a reasonable man would, by the way, reasonable means the guy deciding to dig it up. It doesn't mean you can pick some guy off the street and say, would you go dig that gold up if it's there in this amount? Well, who knows what's reasonable to a reasonable man? And I'm a reasonable man. I go for the gold. And as long as I can make a living from it, which I was trying to before, with the Forest Service, by attacking the grant, the grantor, the grantee, and the trust, by somebody who has no business attacking it through a public-private partnership, through the environmental groups, economic groups that want to steal it. Because see, if I wasn't there, they could run me off. They could come in and they could go in and get the minerals. Because see, the Nature Conservancy is the biggest miners on the planet. They mine all their mineral estates, and they've done it since day one. And then their trust profits from it in their public-private partnership. Because see, they get paid and they pay no taxes. And so, because they're non-profits, and nonprofits don't pay taxes. And so then these economic development companies like Southern Oregon Regional Economic and KS Wild, they're not directly partners, they're indirectly partners because Southern Oregon Regional Economic, SOREADY, is in partnership with the Forest Service. By the way, they run a trust for them. Look it up. They run a re-lending program for rural America, which is about a takeover. And then you have KS Wild that is in a public-private partnership that sues the Forest Service and these other environmental groups that sue the Forest Service. And the Forest Service promptly lays down and settles and gives them a bunch of money. And they give them attorney's fees and they take it right out of their budget. So I call this fraud because they're putting up fake stakeholders. They get sued. They then try to make that a precedent in court to attack the mineral estate, the valuable mineral deposit estate that they have no business attacking. And in the BLM, they're where you file it in the county that you're in, and you file it with the BLM to the district here. It's in Portland. You file it in the local county where you register it. And there's fees involved in that, filing fees and assessment work. I do assessment work. If you got smaller than 10 claims, you can do assessment work, and you don't have to pay the fees, which they just raised astronomical. So the average guy is being locked out, which that goes against the intent of the 1872 mining law, where they amended it and added a bunch of minerals to it. And so I would like to state that Magistrate Clark is a criminal, and Judge Panner, because he doesn't pay attention, because he handles too many criminal cases and doesn't really understand property law, rubber stamps Magistrate Clark. He's guilty of a crime. By the way, they call it the Corrupt Organization and Governmental Officials Act, otherwise known as RICO. These organizations are so corrupt through the public-private partnership, which is socialism, where you have to be on the inside, part of the inside group in your area in this public-private partnership, to not be taxed to death out of your property, not to have the public-private partnership merging with your local government, your cities, like the city of Medford, the city of Ashland. They're all in these groups, and they're all working together to steal the land, your land, my mining claim. If you haven't, by the way, most of the property around here is either agricultural grants from the government or mineral grants. And as the mineral grant is the dominant estate, you probably find out, if you're living in the mountains and the hills around Southern Oregon, your property was originally a mining claim. And you're supposed to get lodial title for that. And if you have lodial title, it can't be ever taken from you without just compensation. And they have to do a mineral survey of it and pay you for the gold that's in the ground if you have it there. And so this is the end of this tape, and I'll be posting it on YouTube. I hope you share it, because I'm poor. I'm trying to monetize this. I'm sorry for the commercials. Please click on them if you like our product, if you like their products.